Hey guys, it's the professor here from ProfPlaysGames with another little episode of gaming with my daughter. So recently I talked about my daughter and I, who's 3, getting into the Legend of Zelda Windwaker on the Wii U. Believe it or not, my Wii U is still plugged in. Actually, it's plugged in specifically for Wind Waker. My daughter was very interested in the Baby Link game, so we plugged it in. So in terms of introducing my daughter to video games, our main concern was really just screen time. And then as we got into Wind Waker, a concern became battling. In the beginning of Wind Waker, at least, there's a lot of exploration, a lot of puzzles, a lot of sailing across the ocean, jumping puzzles using like a hook shot and swinging across places. There was a little bit of battling, but a lot of it was the Forbidden Forest with those little Deku plants, where you're popping in the pod and then jumping and leaping to the next and trying to use your leaf to kind of float across places and figuring out where to go and how to do it. A lot of that is really like thinking through puzzles. My daughter was just there by my side helping me figure out where to go, getting a little frustrated about those pods and just really lining up the jumps, and if I'd fall back to the ground, and she would get a little exasperated and want that to try again and be more patient, which is something that my daughter was really helping me do in my gaming, because I tend to be an impatient gamer and kind of want to just, I like to play fast, but sometimes that does lead to problems where I'll miss a jump or miss something, not see something and have to come back for it. My daughter has actually been very good about pointing those things out and saying, "No, go over there. What's over there? Let's explore over there." So that's been nice. But as you got further into the game, when it became, I think it was the Forsaken Fortress was the first place where the battling really came up, where Link has his shield, Link has his sword, where Link is battling a lot of different types of monsters. It became something that, like earlier parts of the game, my daughter wanted to emulate. She wanted to grab her toy broom and use that as a sword, and was a little bit about whacking people with it. So we had to have a lot of conversations about what kind of appropriate play there is. It's fun to pretend play Baby Link. It's fun to pretend play as Tetra, for example. But when it comes to the battling, we want to tone that down. And for the most part, she's really responsive and listens to us. We sit her down as an adult would talk to another adult, just very clear expectations, and we keep our expectations in mind as we move through the day. And we allow her time to experiment and to push boundaries like kids normally do. But we always maintain the same boundaries. We don't change those boundaries because she gets upset or nervous or worried or mad. We'll let her have her tantrums if she needs to work out her emotions and kind of talk her through them. Time in as opposed to time out. So for the most part, she was not battling in the house with us because she knew that was something that was not okay. But when she would go to Grandma and Grandpa's house and she was explaining the story to them, she was just so caught up in what the story was, kind of moving them through each piece of the narrative she had just experienced, that battling was part of it. So she would often want to battle with her grandpa. They would pull out sticks and they would battle each other. And for Grandpa, that was fine, that was fun. It was something that he was interested in indulging his granddaughter with. But it was something that was a little bit problematic, and her grandma would bring that to us, and when we'd pick her up and we'd talk about it, and we just lay down the ground rules with them as well, that battling's not okay. That's not something that we want her to be emulating. And as the time with Wind Waker went on, of course, there was lots of puzzles, lots of adventuring, lots of storylines, lots of characters, all that stuff was great, but there was more battling. And as you got further and further in the game, there's more and more and more battling, longer battles. Think about the battle with Puppet Ganon before you move on to actual Ganon. Even though the battles are, I would say, kid-friendly, they're cartoony, it's not something like a current game we're playing, which will be a video for the future about Paper Mario and the Origami King. That's very much like, here's a hammer, here you're stepping on someone's head, they're all paper origami. That's an E for everyone game anyways. Wind Waker is not. Wind Waker, I think, is a 10+ game. So that was, of anything with the Wind Waker experience with my daughter, that's the one piece that felt like a mistake. There was too much violence, too much battling, even though is perceived to us, like older adults, like super cartoony, and just not real. For her, it felt real, and it was something that she wanted to try out in real life. We're lucky that we have a good relationship where she will listen to our reasoning and really respond to it in a way that is like 90% there. There'll be 10% where she'll still try to do it, try to push boundaries, which is healthy and normal, and that's totally fine. you know, she would hurt someone every once in a while when she was practicing, and that's something that we wanted to avoid. So the Wind Waker, you know, where we started off with no intention at all of playing a video game, and then moved into Wind Waker. And it starts off great with all this play acting, pretend play, lots of vocabulary development, characters, like lots of attachment there, which was really felt pretty healthy and nice. To move into the battling, that's when it caused a conflict between my wife and I, between like all three of us revolving around that game, where my wife wanted us to finish the game as quickly as possible, which I agreed with. So she wanted me to accelerate the process when we weren't playing together, to go through and, like, for example, get all the Triforce pieces, get everything set up so that we could have the final battle with Ganon, and then finish the game. Because otherwise, you know, as I said, we do half-an-hour increments, so it was very much half an hour every couple of days. So we were just continually playing this game over time. So I could fast forward outside of my experience with my daughter and get to the point where there was the final battle. And it was funny with this game is that I always thought I was at the final battle when really I wasn't even close. For example, in the fortress, the final Ganon's Tower, you face the bosses all over again. So I did all of those by myself, and then I got to Ganon's door, and I thought, okay, this is great, we're at Ganon's door. But then there are several iterations of Ganon before you actually get to the Ganon on top of the tower where Zelda's there shooting the light arrows. So there was more even then than I wanted, but she was good about respecting the boundaries. When the game was off, we aren't practicing the battling. We can practice other components of the battle. We can, you know, talk about, you know, pretend play like Zelda shooting light arrows. That seemed relatively safe. Play act Zelda falling down and coming back up. And then Ganon being turned to stone without really focusing on like the sword play. We focused a lot more on light arrows being reflected off the shield, so she would practice with her little Hylian shield, and we would pretend to shoot light arrows at her and they'd bounce off and hit Ganon, and that's how we play acted that and kind of moved her away from the sword fighting. So it was a lesson for me. There were a lot of lessons for me with the Wind Waker with my daughter. Obviously things I didn't even expect, the play acting, the vocabulary, the character attachment. Just she's able to craft stories and narrative now, which is just amazing. And that happens both because we played the video game with a lot of narrative, and also because of we read tons and tons and tons of books. So those things all together create that narrative attachment for her. But then obviously the battling was something that I didn't consider, and that was a negative. I would say we were lucky; it was fairly easily contained. I've seen other families where that type of media is seen and the kid emulates that type of fighting or behavior, and they really don't let go of that. And I think part of it's our consistency, but also maybe my daughter's personality. Now we're moved on to other games. We play Yoshi's Crafted World, which I'll talk about later. Currently playing Paper Mario and Origami King, which I'll talk about later. Also played Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker, which I'll talk about later as well. All these games, the violence is basically stepping on someone's head, or with Mario, he also uses a hammer. So there's not really a lot, and those are all E for everyone, and there's a really good reason why they are. And those are games that I would probably recommend going toward. With small children like that, if you must introduce small children to video games at that young age, which, like I said before, I didn't really want to, but with this shelter in place, we were looking for other things to do in the home because we're together 16 hours a day, every day. So those are the games that I'm looking for now, and I'm really thankful to have a Switch, really thankful to have Nintendo games, because they really, corner the E for everyone market and provide games that are really rich and deep. And interesting for me as a gamer, but also for my daughter, kind of experiencing games for the first time. So thanks for listening. Hope you'll be back for a future video.